welcome for the second session. And so yesterday we came to know, we learned something of the basics of the brain and how it works. And yesterday's presentation was more in context so that we can understand, say, especially today with the meditation, neuroscience of meditation in a very and where the our understanding will be very easy. Now, so all of us, we know that the meditation has been a fabric of our culture and our ancient since the time immemorial, and it is, of course, it has changed its way a lot, and its purpose also it has changed a lot, but still. That's the beauty of our culture. If you see, ours is the only culture which is a practicing culture with lot of modifications, right, from last 5,000 years. Otherwise, you have any other culture. You have a Greek culture, culture of Egypt, or culture of Mesopotamia. So many ancient cultures. They are in the pages of history today. But ours is the only culture which is a practicing culture, and which we have taken, right, from generations to generations, and modifying those practices. So similarly, you can see in the field of yoga or meditation also. The purpose of yoga and meditation, probably in the very ancient philosophy, was say more towards for the spiritual realization and well-being. Right, and in the due course of time, today yoga has a very different connotations. Right, yoga or meditation, whatever we do, it has the same final goal to reach, that where you realize your own inner potentials. This yoga and meditation was not an exclusive practice, right, in those days, but it was a very intrinsic fabric of our culture. Because it is intrinsic fabric of our culture, right, and it has been passed on from generation to generation, right, it is still existing. If you want to try to understand the contribution of neuroscience perspective or the scientific basis of this yoga or the meditation practice, the first ever introduction of this grand yoga and meditation for the western part of the globe was given by Swami Vivekananda himself. The picture that you are seeing over here is the first, actually, the symposium of an international symposium on the contemplative neuroscience. A new branch in the neuroscience is developing. It is called as contemplative neuroscience. And the person who is giving the plenary lecture, the first plenary lecture, is Dr. Kabat-Zinn, and I happen to be one of the invitee for this particular symposium that is in Denver, in the US, and I was representing our country over there. But I was very surprised to see his first slide during the seminar. So and we have to understand what was this actually, this symposium. This symposium was a closed door symposium. It was not like a big conference like. We would have been there over 100 or 150 people. And all these are very core neuroscience people who are working in these areas, including 2 or 3 Nobel laureates were there in that hall in the Denver. So Dr. Kabat-Zinn, in his first presentation, so he thanked for this particular grand event where in the history of the world, right, that witnessed is what was in 1893, that in the World Parliament of Religions, where Swami Vivekananda went there and he gave the grand ideas, right, of our culture, and introduced this, right, to the American audience over there. Why I am telling you this is, see, when this particular meeting, when it was a core academic meeting, core academicians, core neuroscience people, including Nobel laureates, and when they take the credit for introducing this contemplative science, to the Western academia should go to an Indian monk is a very, very, very big thing by itself. Otherwise, somebody, right, who is, say, from our country, who is really devoted, okay, who has a lot of reverence, and he speak of a lot of monks and rishis, that is quite natural and is quite acceptable. But this meeting was of a different stature. So in this meeting, Dr. Kabat-Zinn gave this particular thing about in 1893 World Parliament of Religion was the first time where the American audience really listened to the word called as meditation or yoga and all those things. So if we also look at the literature, Swami Vivekananda has very clearly said, he says, yoga is one of the grandest of all the sciences. We have to take up this study like any other science of material nature, and he says most important, remember there is no mystery in it, and much more important, there is no danger in it. So he really visualized that, okay, the research of these practices, it has to be done in a very systematic manner. And also there is the first ever book for the technique in the modern days for the yoga or the meditation was written by Swami Vivekananda himself. Is the Raj Yoga book. If you start reading the Raj Yoga book, the first these Raj Yoga lectures, we have to keep it in mind that he is giving in London for the London audience. Naturally, they doesn't know anything about of our philosophy or our background, and he describes in that book a concept. He tells in his first day of his first lecture, he tells, see, I'm telling you the profound truth from our philosophy, and he tells that I know that you people will not accept this at this point of time, and he gives his own explanation why it will be very difficult for those audience or for those people to accept this. So he tells, say for example, he tells, okay, you imagine that you are passing through a very dense forest, the first time you are passing through the forest, and you want to cross that dense forest from the one corner to the another corner, and you have a lot of obstacles, right? You have thorns, okay, you have stones or so many things. It's not a very well laid road. So then he tells, what you do is, okay, you pass, you walk for some time, okay, then again you come back, you walk and you come back, you walk and come back, and slowly, a mud road is laid down of repeatedly walking, and when that mud road is laid down, it will be very easy for you to cross the forest. This is the corollary Swamiji gives in his Raj Yoga lectures. Then he says, he tells, see, the same thing happens in your brain. He says, whenever a new idea is given, what is the immediate reaction of any person? He tells he rejects it. Why he rejects it? It is because, right, that particular path of that idea is not there in your brain. The neurons with this particular idea is not being connected in your brain. And when this is repeatedly been, you walk through that particular idea or you contemplate that particular idea repeatedly in your brain, right? That particular neurons are connected and it forms a path. And when it forms a path, right, you really accept that idea and you internalize that idea. But see, this is the concept that Swami Vivekananda gives in his lecture in 1898. And this is the same concept what yesterday, which I told, we call it as neural plasticity, right? Which as a thing that we know now. So this particular concept we came to know only in 1906 when Charles Sherrington gave this particular statement. But there was no any proof for this. So Sherrington in 1906, he gives this particular hypothesis. He says, brain is an enchanting loom. Threads of the loom can be broken either by the internal perturbation or by the external perturbation, like learning, new threads will form, they will branch out, give a different pattern, they will shift in these these connections, but it will have a very meaningful pattern. Please try to understand this particular statement. 1906, this particular statement from Charles Sherrington, and the statement of Swami Vivekananda even 10 years before this is almost the same. Now, why I want to bring over this is, one is to acknowledge the contribution, to give the historical perspective of the way what the research is going on now, from where actually the foundation laid, and also to get the concept. And this particular concept, we have to understand. Suppose in our practice, we are practicing and still we are not getting deep into that particular practice, we are not internalized. So it is the defect that is there in our practice, not in the system. What is the defect? Defect is as simple as that the road for that particular thought pattern is not yet laid in our brain. When that particular that road is not in our brain, the brain rejects it, or we find it more difficult, right, to internalize. So this is the first point. You please keep it in mind. Now I'll come to another important concept also here. We have this William James. Today, no psychology or the neuroscience, any books, right, doesn't turn their pages without giving reverence to William James. And William James, he a profound thinker, and he gives this particular statement. He says, a faculty of voluntarily bringing back a wandering attention over and over again is very root of judgment, character, and will. So these are the three important psychological attributes in any spiritual aspirants or a yoga aspirants in its truest purpose: judgment, character, and will. And further he tells, so we need education system, it should be par excellence, and the whole purpose is that for any of these practices that we have to cultivate a skill of getting more attentive, and we have to be more focused, right? So this is what William James says. And William James further, he also says, so this is how actually our mind has to be trained, right? In 1980 he gives this statement. Further he tells, but he doesn't have any clue how to do it, because those people didn't know, right, this science of yoga and meditation. But William James says this is how we have to focus our mind and focus, or we have to develop the skill for the concentration. But how to do it, William James didn't know it. Then something else happened. It was in 25th March 1896. The Philosophical Club of the Harvard, there will be a meeting. In this meeting, William James meets Swami Vivekananda. Both they will have a lot of discussions. And if we look at the William James works, there will be tremendous amount of shift in his outlook for analyzing or to his concept of mind, his concept on brain, and his concept of consciousness after this particular meeting, right? And then, right, what his concepts will be tremendously changed subsequently after this particular meeting. And of course, William James agrees to write a foreword for the first edition of Rajoga book written by Swami Vivekananda. But unfortunately, William James could not able to submit his foreword in time. The psychological aspects, the principles, right, of attention, concentration, the difference between the behavior and mind, and subsequently for the consciousness. Please make these three distinguish: behavior, mind, and consciousness. Now, subsequently, now what happened? Around 30 years back, a big event happens in Harvard University. His Holiness Dalai Lama was invited. So he is addressing the whole galaxy of medical fraternity of Harvard University. And while speaking, Dalai Lama gives a challenge to the best brains, right, in the field of medicine. So in this Harvard University, Dalai Lama gives a challenge to all the best of brains, and he tells, if you can do something in my brain, which you can insert something in my brain, and through that, if I can really experience the same joy and the happiness and the experience that I experience with meditation, then he tells that why the hell I should spend so much of my time in doing meditation. You do something in my brain which I can experience the same thing. So this was a ringing bell actually to one person whom you can see on the screen is Richard Davidson. He's in Wisconsin University. He takes up this challenge and he tells to His Holiness, and so he promises that he will take up this particular challenge and try to see that, right, evaluate what is the effect of this meditation on the brain and what could be the probable mechanism. And he promises that this meditation, he will try to get it in the mainstream, right, of academia. So now we can see that whole lot of literature that is coming up in the mainstream academia of research in yoga, meditation, and so many things with neuroscience and physiology, medical science, everywhere. So Dr. Richard Davidson with his Mind and Life Institute, they really laid a very firm foundation around 30 years back for the whole world. So, of course, so this is what with me with His Holiness and Richard Davidson. So all of us know that from the say philosophical perspective, we have these different koshas. We have, say, the physical body, that is Annamaya kosha, which is our musculoskeletal system. Then we have a Pranamaya kosha, is the prana or the energy, right, that gives the life, okay, for this Annamaya kosha. Then we have a Manomaya kosha, which is about the psyche aspects, mind aspects, right, emotional aspects, and Vijnanamaya kosha, that is intellectual aspects, and Anandamaya kosha, which is a bliss, okay, that we experience. So this is a Panchakosha model you can see of in any yoga or meditation school. So they work upon this model. So which is almost we can say correlate and equivalent to our physical, intellectual, emotional, moral, and spiritual, which nowadays we say IQ, EQ, and SQ, and all those things. And we have seen that these meditation practice or the yoga practice, the influence all these things. However, the first the effect of meditation practice was very around 40 years back, was given by Herbert Benson, where he said he gives a scientific explanation for meditation. He tells it is a wakeful, hypometabolic state. Please try to understand this. Now, what do you mean by metabolism? Metabolism means where our cells are always very active. Okay, so it is very active. And whenever the metabolism, comes down, so we go to a very drowsy state or a sleep state. the metabolism when it comes down. But Benson gives a very good definition. He says it is a wakeful state, which is a meditation is a wakeful state. It is not a drowsy state. And it is a hypometabolic state. Means what? All our metabolism of our body, it comes down if you do a meditation practice regularly. Now, what does it mean? You recollect from yesterday's lecture, I told you about sympathetic and parasympathetic. Where parasympathetic, it reduces everything, your heart rate, blood pressure, and all those things it reduces. So, the regular practice of meditation, the first effect, there is a shift between the sympathetic to parasympathetic. Means that your heart rate comes down, your blood pressure comes down, your respiration becomes very deep and slow, and your mind becomes very calm and cool. A very specific wave in your brain it arises. We call it as alpha waves. So whenever there is an alpha wave which is recorded from our brain, so that will tell, okay, a person is in a very calm, cool state. His metabolism has come down, but still a person is very awake, is awake and is alert. Okay, so this is what the definition, what the Herbert Benson gave. So and this is called as a relaxation response. Even today, if you go to any, say, yoga sessions, for any of the, say, disease specific, especially with the stress, for any of these stress conditions, the first goal, okay, or a medical professional goal, the output of the practice should be a relaxation response. Means a person should feel relaxed once he practices, right, whatever he or she has been taught. So what does Herbert Benson says? Relaxation response is a physical state of deep rest, right, that changes the physiological and emotional response to the stress, which is opposite to flight or fight response. Means what? So it is physically we feel very calm and cool, and we have to bring our body to this state, right, where we feel very calm and cool after the practice. This state is going to help us, right? Yesterday, which I told about reaction and response. So for our emotional response. Say for example, we say every day for say 1 hour we practice asana, you practice pranayama, we practice om chanting, we practice mantra chanting and all those things. After 1 hour of practice, still, okay, my mind is not cool, my mind is still confused and agitated, it is wandering, it is not focusing. So that simply tells that, okay, your practice was not efficient enough to get the relaxation response. So this is what I'm talking from the Annamaya Kosha point of view, or from the physical point of view, that you have to feel fresh, you have to feel very relaxed, your heart rate should come down, your blood pressure should come down, and you should have a very regular respiration, right, which should be very slow and deep. That is very important. This physical state is the first state, or I can say a foundation upon which the other say mental or the psychological things can build upon. So our first target always that we should achieve this particular relaxation response. Now scientifically speaking, so there are 4 components in any of the meditation practice. It can be say asana practice, it can be pranayama practice, or it can be say meditation practice, it can be mantra, or it can be focus on breath, or whatever the object or whatever the thing that you you have been asked to focus for. But these 4 important things will happen. Number 1, there will be an attention regulation. Number 2, there will be body awareness. Number 3, there will be emotional regulation and there will be reappraisal of the emotions. Number 4, there will be perspective of self. And this the perspective of the self is what that is very unique for our philosophy. Otherwise, this perspective of self doesn't fit in to the philosophy of the say US or for the western part of the globe. So we'll try to understand that what actually it means and what happens in the brain. First, let me go for the attention regulation. We have given a mantra, or we have to chant Om. So I'm starting Om or a mantra, and we see that without our conscious experience or our conscious think, our mind suddenly flips to something else. I start thinking, about my house, or I start thinking about my office, this, or maybe my mind goes around the world, and suddenly I say, "Oh no, mantra." You get back your mind back to mantra, and we started chanting mantra again, maybe for 1 minute, 2 minutes, or 3 minutes. So again, right? Suddenly the mind flips, and it goes somewhere else. Maybe after some time, again we recollect, no. My teacher has told, or my guru has told, that I have to focus on mantra, and I'll get back to this mantra. So this is the experience for all of us. Not only during meditation practice, you do any work, you start reading something, right? My mind flips somewhere else and it comes back. So this focusing and defocusing, it happens during any meditation practice. Now, why this is very important? And if it is happening, and this is a normal process that happens, and most important is, whenever there is a defocusing, whenever your mind was defocusing away, right, from the mantra or a japam or whatever that you are supposed to do, you just try to analyze what was there in the content of the mind when it was defocused. 99%, all that content of the when we were defocusing, the content will be those things which are very close to our emotion. Right? It can be about my work, or it can be about my family, or it can be about myself, or it can be of something else which I like more. So it is very close with our emotion. So our defocusing and focusing is related to our emotional state. So this is what the bottom line that I want all of you to keep this in mind. Now, why does this happen? So before going to that, why this happens, please try to read this slide with Alexis Carrel. I hope all of you are seeing this. Intellectual power is augmented by the habit of precise reasoning, logic, mathematical language, all those things which we saw yesterday about the left brain. And he tells that mental discipline and complete and deep observation is the mandatory thing for a person to develop, right, the intellectual power. Mental discipline, complete and deep observation. But on the contrary, if you have an incomplete and superficial observations, and if you have a rapid succession of impressions, multiplicity of images, there will be lack in the intellectual development of the intellectual discipline, and it hinders the development of mind. Please try to understand all the words which I have put it in the blue fonts. I would like to tell. It is there that if you have a rapid succession of impression and multiplicity of images, I will give a very simple example. When we come in our house and sit in front of a TV, where we have around 200 or 250 channels. We take our remote and we go on changing the channels for every 30 seconds and about say 1 minute, right? And see and browse all the 250 channels. Maybe after half an hour we come back to the first channel, and again, so we are seeing the same thing, right? Now in this, what happens is you have many programs is going in all these 250 channels and nothing is registered in your brain. See, at the end of this half an hour, if I ask, okay, what is it you learned in this half an hour? You say, okay, it's nothing. You just observed. So this is not a deep observation. It is a superficial observation. Not only superficial observation, it is a rapid succession of impression. It is not the impact of the impression of one thing, but you have a multiple things of impression that is happening. And we do this consciously. Okay, we do this consciously. So if you ask anybody, even the students also, say half an hour I read science, half an hour I read social studies, then half an hour I read mathematics, and 15 minutes I read Hindi, then I go to poetry. So brain is not really ready to accept the multiple things and get impressed or get that engrammed in the neural network. So these rapids, the succession of these images or the multiplicity of these images, the brain cannot really conceive any idea about that, right? And if this thing is repeated, if this becomes our habit, so Alexis Carrel tells that, okay, this will hinder the development of intellectual discipline. You please try to just correlate this, right, with our meditation practice when we were freshly inducted into the practice. So we start doing, say, mantra. My mind goes everywhere, 101 things, not focusing on anything. Suddenly, right, I focus it. Again, there is defocusing. So focusing and defocusing, focusing and defocusing is happening now. So we have, in this particular practice, if we go on doing it, what happens? The frequency of focusing and defocusing, right, will reduce as we start practicing. Today, say half an hour I have meditated. Probably in this half an hour, 1,000 times I would have gone focus and defocus, focus and defocus. But still, tomorrow I practice, day after tomorrow I practice regularly, say for next 15 days. So my focusing and defocusing, right, it will reduce. So from 1,000 times, probably it would have come to 500 times. Regularly I practice this, 500 can become 100 or 100 can become, say, 20, 25. And slowly, my brain will get a capacity to focus on a given task or a given mantra where I can completely focus. This particular capacity which the brain develops or my mind develops, where I suddenly realize, no, I have to focus. No, I have to focus. This is called as metacognition. Metacognition, where I will read my mind and say, no, this is not the thing. Okay, now I have to focus. So there are two important parts of the brain, right, where this jugglery between focusing and defocusing is going to happen. So as yesterday I told you two things, your animal part of the brain and your frontal cortex. So you want to focus on mantra, frontal cortex is very, very important. It starts focusing. But my frontal cortex is not very well trained. My animal brain, it takes now the upper hand. So as I told you yesterday, my animal part of the brain is more, right, emotional thing or passion, or fantasies and all those things will be there. So suddenly my thought, okay, it goes everywhere. And I realize, no, I have to focus on mantra. Then again I'll start focusing on mantra. So this particular focusing and defocusing, focus and defocusing, right? The capacity that we develop is very, very crucial, so that at the, say, couple of days or weeks of practice, we tend to concentrate completely, right, on a mantra or a symbol or a respiration or whatever is been for us asked to do. This is how the attention is brought about by the meditation practice. So two important things when we start doing yoga or a meditation practice. Number one is a relaxation response. Number two, and gradually, right, we should start focusing. And when we start focusing very gradually for a long period of time, what is that effect that is going to happen? That effect that is going to happen is, we can see, I hope everybody are seeing this particular slide, which tells that meditation wants to increase the size of the brain. Now, what do you mean by size of the brain? Size of the brain, as I told you yesterday, it is not that 1 kg of the brain is going to become 2 kg. No. It is the network, it is the synapse of these neurons which becomes more and more, and it becomes very strong. Not only that, with this particular practice, right, when my attention span is increased, right, new neurons are also generated. And there are some few chemicals are released in the brain. We call it as BDNF, brain derived neurotropic factor, which helps to sprout new neurons, right? So this is how it is called as, there is an increase in the size of the brain. So which part of the brain? So if you can see, right, in this cartoon, so we can see that it's the front part of the brain, your frontal cortex. So more you pay attention, highly focused, which is the first criteria for any of this meditation practice. So first what it says, that your frontal cortex capacity is increased as our focusing capacity also increases. And as yesterday I told, apart from attention, my frontal cortex has many other functions. So it can be intellectual capacity, it can be logical thinking, rational, personality, all those things is associated with my frontal cortex. So if I want to enhance all my other cognitive capabilities, the first step is always, right, to enhance my attention span or the capacity. So once this frontal cortex connectivity becomes very strong, it's quite natural my other capacity will also increase. So probably the work that I would have done for 2 hours with meditation practice, right, my efficiency will increase, and I can do it, say, in 1 hour or half an hour, and which is also one of the basis, okay, for our effective, the time management. So even this scan, so this is the MRI scan of during meditation and also during rest. So where through the scan we can assess the activity of the brain by the amount of blood supply. So first we have to understand whichever the part of the brain which is more active, right, blood supply to that part of the brain will be more. So here, right, say you can see while meditating inside the brain, I mean the functional MRI scanner, while meditating you can see the frontal lobe has more blood supply, right, when person is only at rest. So in this here he is only under rest, okay, he's thinking something else, but here he is really meditating, and you can see increase in the blood supply to the frontal cortex. Next, other important thing is this. As yesterday I told you that, okay, you have a different parts of the brain, and these different parts of the brain, has a very specific functions. We know the frontal cortex is important for higher cognitive things. I told you we have a back occipital cortex, which is helpful for the vision. You have an area which helps for the say hearing. Okay, and you have an area for sensation and all those things. Now, see, you are whenever say you are in conversation, or whenever you are experiencing the external environment, you are not experiencing, right, as different events. Suppose say you are talking to somebody, and you are also seeing him. You are seeing and talking and trying to understand everything. It is happening in a same time scale. But actually, in the brain, it doesn't happen like that. See, we know that the light, it travels faster than the sound. So whenever we are seeing something, the first thing that goes to the brain is the light. It goes to the back of my brain. Second is the sound that goes to one part of the brain. Right? And then the content of what we are hearing, it goes to your frontal cortex. But how we are experiencing? We are experiencing as if everything is happening at the same frame, in the same time frame. It's not that I'm seeing somebody first, I'm listening the same person the second, I'm understanding something else. No. We are seeing the person, we are listening to him, we are trying to understand, right? At the same time that is happening. But in the brain, it happens in the different time scales. Now, how does this brain, right? It binds everything. It binds everything, right? By a very fine vibration of these neurons, that which yesterday I told, which will be around say 200 to 250 or 3 hertz. Hertz means per second. So you have a very fine vibrations of this electrical activity of those brain, right? And this fine high frequency vibration is what that binds everything together. So it's like, say for example, you have a string instrument. You have a 50 string instrument, say in one room, right? You tune all the string of the instrument, and you pluck one particular string. That vibration of that, it influences all the strings of all the other instruments, and everything will vibrate as a single coherence. So this is how the brain tries to bind all the sensations together, and it gives us an experience as if everything is happening in a single entity. And this, which I told you, right, which will be a very high vibration around 250 hertz that happens in the brain, with meditation practice, this becomes very high. That's what the title says here. Long-term meditators self-induce high amplitude gamma. This is called as gamma waves. We have alpha waves, so many other waves that comes in the brain, but gamma waves. So these gamma waves during meditation is what we increase ourselves. Otherwise, naturally it is there, but that is what we increase. So it is self-induced. For practicing meditation regularly for a long period of time, they generate more gamma in their brain. The people, naturally it is there to everybody, but it is a meditation practice that will increase the strength of this gamma, and it will bind all the inputs, right? It is that is coming to the brain. When the meditation becomes an habit for us, when most of the time when we are in a meditative state, what happens? This gamma will be always high. See, in meditation thing, we have two things. We call it as trait characteristic and state characteristics. What do you mean by state characteristics? Okay, I do a meditation for now, for say for 15-20 minutes. I feel very happy. I'm very fresh, right? So this is the state characteristic, because now I did meditation. Okay, I'm feeling that. But you have trait characteristic. Trait means when we do a meditation for a long period of time, for years together, whether we are meditating or not meditating, right, we are in a certain state of mind. So that is called as trait characteristics. So this gamma amplitude, whenever we do meditation, at that point of time gamma is increased, that amplitude will be for some time will come down. Then it, say again you practice in the afternoon, right, gamma will increase. Say after half an hour, again that strength will come down. So again I will say in the evening you practice, right, again it will increase, after that again it will come down. But if you practice regularly for a long time, so this gamma will be of high amplitude, right, whether you are doing meditation or you are not doing the meditation. This high vibrations, if it is there for a very long period of time, that will change the property of these neurons. And the neurons will develop the capacity, right, to perceive the most subtle the inputs, which generally, right, we don't. Even in a small subtle things, okay, a person will be very sensitive to grasp it. So, and it will also get the capacity, right, sometimes to grasp the other inputs, but which where these inputs cannot be even from these five senses also. So sense of awareness is more. Now our awareness is very gross awareness. Our awareness is not very fine awareness. So but still our neurons has a very small amount of say gamma, which is also very important for very gross awareness. But if this gamma amplitude increases, we build, our neurons will have the capacity to perceive even a very fine awareness. So this is the second stage, right, of any of this, say this meditation practice, and also for the attention regulation. So first is at very gross level, what relaxation response. I should feel very relaxed. Once I feel relaxed, I start practicing. I develop a capacity to focus on a given mantra, breath, deity, idol, whatever it is. Then subsequently with this, gamma increases, right, that will build an inherent capacity for my brain, right, to capture the subtleties, and we become more aware. So this awareness is very, very important. Now, how all these things will happen? So we have something called in the brain called as default networking. See, I cannot show the slides of as yesterday I showed with lot of figures, because these are very small structures that is present in the brain. So it is like a default mode. Default mode is, it is always active. Always active, what I told, that whenever I get defocused, the content will be more which is close to my emotions. So I focus and defocus, I focus and say and defocus, and try to focus on everything, right? Then here, when I start also increasing my attention span, what else is happening? My capacity for me to regulate my emotion is also increased. Why do you think it is increased? Because when my mind is defocused, the content of my mind is more, which is very close to my emotions. So I'm taking away my mind, okay, which is predominantly emotive, right? Then going more into cognitive and putting more attention to one particular thing. So two things we are capacity that we are developing with the attention. One is we are increasing the capacity of our mind to focus. At the same time, right, less defocusing will also help me for to develop my emotional resilience. So two things happens whenever with this and all these things, it happens in the default mode of networking. This is what this particular image tells. So we have certain you can see these yellow dots over here. So this is the frontal cortex in the first. These two is the DMN network, that is default mode of networking, which I told, right? So this like an animal part of the brain and the frontal part of the brain. These two, right? It becomes active, and when this becomes more and more and more connected, right? So we also develop a higher capacity for emotional processing and also the stronger processing of the distracting events that is happening. So all these things, it is happening at the mind level, at the intellectual level. So, but this is a mandatory thing, right, for us to raise to more and more the experiential level as far as for the core, that meditation is concerned. Right. So this is what this slide says. First, as a switching, which I told you, focusing, defocusing, focusing, and defocusing. One particular part of the brain, we call it as insula. It's very important, right? Then we maintain to focus to one always, because the shifting, the frequency comes down. Then slowly we start. It's a full half an hour. I can concentrate, say, on the mantra. So I maintain that. And when I go on maintaining that for a long period of time, it becomes a habit for me. And when it becomes a habit for me, right, my gamma also increases. All these three, right, it is associated with the activity of certain parts of the brain, which is mentioned over here. Please don't go to these technical details. But it suffices to now for us to understand that, right, and for us to evaluate in which stage actually we are in our practice. Suppose my switching is always, I'm practicing meditation from last, say, 1 year, still I could not be able to focus, right? So that shows, okay, you need more practice. There could be some fault in the practice, or you may not be serious about the practice, right? And that clearly that shows that, okay, you have to put into more effort. And from the neuroscience point of view, so we can say that your insula is more. Still it has not developed that capacity to interact with other parts of the brain where you can put into this practice. So you don't worry about which parts of the brain. Let's just try to understand, right? In this process, so brain activity process is also involved, where we start with the practice of meditation, we try to maintain the attention, and when it becomes an habit, when the gamma is generated. So again, the same thing, it tells the same thing. So in early stage, we have an effort. We really put our effort, and this is a must. When we put our effort to always to focus, the capacity that what my brain or my mind develop is called as metacognition. That yes, no, I have to focus on mantra. I just defocus, I have to focus on mantra. The recognition, the faster that we recognize, no, I am defocusing, now I have to focus, right? My metacognitive capacity will be, it tells that it is developing more and more and more. But generally, we need more general effort. In the middle stage of the practice, right, we have to put effort, but our mind wandering reduces. So we can focus on certain things, whatever we need to focus. But in a long term, right, our focus is completely effortless. Right, and this effortless stage is what, as a spiritual aspirant or in a serious practitioner of any school of meditation, right, he has to reach as far as his Manomaya Kosha is concerned, where his practice should be very effortless. When this practice becomes effortless, our mind or my neurons develops a new capacity to be more and more aware. Right? Now, So this slide, it also tells the same thing, but there is also other thing over here. What is it? In doing all these things, what is the benefit? Okay, I get a benefit as a practitioner, but will there be a benefit to the brain itself? Yes, there is a benefit to the brain. What? It offers a neuroprotection. Now, what do you mean by neuroprotection? See, in this present day of lifestyle, we are exposed to, because of our change in lifestyle, change in dietary pattern, change in thought pattern, 24/7 of, working, we're not in tune with the nature. All those things are insult to our physiological system, insult to the brain, insult to all my body and mind, where the inherent capacity of my body to fight these insults, in due process what happens, there will be degeneration of these neurons can happen, right? And when this degeneration of the neurons, when it happens, right, the person feels, okay, he's become less competent, he is more susceptible to stress, right, and he starts now forgetting the names. You start forgetting, so certain it happens with the due normal with biological age, as age also. So all this practice, apart from we developing a new capacity or capability, right, it offers what? Neuroprotection. It means that what? Brain starts or it preserves its capacity. That's why you can see, right, all the guru or the meditation masters, if they're really sincere practitioners, even at the age of 70, 80, right? So their capacity is tremendous, and they are multitasking, and they can manage many things very, very, very easily, because, right, their capacity of their neurons is still preserved. It is not affected with the normal aging process. That is very important. Probably tomorrow I can say, but till to give that, we have demonstrated that the brain of a very senior practitioner of, say, 70 years or 80 years, their brain is still like that of a 30 years young adult, but their biological age is around 70 or 80. So this is what the neuroprotection means, and of course it increases the thickness of the brain. The other important things, okay, which would like to tell over here. So you can see these colors areas over there. You just have a look at this, but listen to me more rather than looking at the slides. I have given these four different areas of the brain. Okay, let me just explain to you, not into the technical details. So we all know what is prefrontal cortex now. We know what is the importance of it. We have something called as insula, right, deep inside the brain. And this insula plays a very, very important role in the bodily awareness or the sensations. Suppose that you practice any asana or you practice pranayama. What is the general instruction is given? General instruction that is given is, right, that whatever the sensation that arises in the body, okay, you just observe it as a third person. You don't emotionally attach to those thoughts. So say I'm in a posture, I get some stretch of my muscle. So there is a pain, but the instruction is you should not emotionally react to that pain. I should not say that like that. I should not emotionally react. Or say some thought comes to my mind, I should not link another thought to that and for another thought to that, another thought to that, so that particular link also should not go. So this is what it means, that we have been instructed to see whatever the bodily signals that goes to the brain and also the thoughts that comes as a third person, not to be entangled with those mind wandering thoughts that comes. Now this particular practice, right, is what regulated by this structure, we call it as insula. Now when I say that, my animal part of the brain and the frontal cortex of the brain should be tightly functionally linked. Now I'll make it more specific. It is the link between insula and the cortex. Okay, insula and the cortex. And as yesterday, which I told you, that you have a specific place for leg, stomach, face, tongue, and everything. Similarly, insula has a place for all my internal organs. My heart has a place in insula, my lungs has a place in insula, my intestine has a place in insula, right? My kidney has a place in insula, and the prefrontal cortex, they link with each other, and it helps us to become more and more aware of what is happening in the body, more and more awareness of not only the gross sensations, most of the most subtle things, which in a normal people, right, their brain doesn't have the capacity to perceive. So as yesterday I told you, you have a synapse, and where the chemicals are released, and one important chemicals, we say it is dopamine. Dopamine is like a feel good. It is like a feel good. Why somebody becomes clinically very depressed? When dopamine in his brain comes down, he becomes very depressed, and they give medications or some SSRI or whatever. So this is how. What is it? Insula. It is replacing the dopamine which is less or lost in the brain. But if we do, studies have very clearly shown in the long-term practice of this meditation, right, our endogenous dopamine means inherently inside the brain itself, dopamine is increased, and this dopamine plays a very, very important role, right, in many things. What? It enhances our perception. So when our awareness is increased, means what? Our sensitivity to perceive the subtle things is also increased, where dopamine plays a very important role. So sometimes we can see even in few people, they will be so dull and dumb. Of course, this is a general colloquium. Even they cannot perceive some very palpable changes that is happening. And we say, oh, I didn't see this. It went off. It went off my awareness at all, or it did not pass through my brain or to my mind. So this is a very general comment that we can see. At that time, it means that they are always in their own mind, that wandering state. But along with your increase in gamma, when dopamine is also increased, our capacity of my neural network to be aware, to sense the most subtle things, like which enhances our sensory inputs, also will increase. Not only thus, right? Number one. Secondly, see, when we would have experienced, whenever you're in a deep state of meditation, right, we would like to be in that state for a long period of time. And even if we want to say, we are just say out of meditative, doing a meditation, and we take some time to get up. We take some time to really come back to the normal work. Okay, there is no that inner urge to move. Okay, my limbs and suddenly get up and go and all those things. That rapidity or that fastness will not be there. So there will be a lot of inhibition at the physical level. So this is what it means that which the first line which I have stated, it decreases the readiness to action. It means that what? My brain, during meditation practice, my brain has increased the capacity for the awareness at the, say, mind level, or at the Manomaya Kosha and the Vijnanamaya Kosha, right? And where dopamine is increased, and this dopamine, right, it helps us to be in that particular state for some time, right, by decreasing, right, or by inhibiting all our our musculoskeletal system or the Annamaya Kosha, okay, for the to bring about the sudden movements. So we would like to be always in that particular mode. We don't feel to talk. We don't feel to converse, okay, immediately after meditation, say for a certain period of time. Now, how long we can be in this particular state? More the time that we are in this particular state, I'm telling you, after meditation practice, right? This will give us a lot of benefit for the long period of time, which we will develop what I told as a trait characteristics. Even if you are not in a meditative state, but still, even if you are not doing a meditation, but you will be in a meditative state. So, after meditation, now if I'm in a meditative state, say for 10 minutes, I would like to be always in that particular state. Of course, after 10 minutes, of course, I have to come back to my normalcy, my normal work. Maybe after, say, 4 or 5 months of practice, after meditation, I'll be, say, in this particular state, say for another 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So how long will I be in this particular state? What it determines my long-term effect. And this post-meditative state, being in that particular state, is what is very important, or a stepping stone to change at our consciousness levels. It is not during meditation. During meditation, we will have some experiences. That is a state characteristic. But even if you are not doing meditation, when my gamma is more, when my brain capacity to be awareness, it is more, and even after meditation, if I be in the same state for a long period of time, so this determines, or this is the first step where towards my experiencing of my, say, higher states of consciousness will happen. So this is, all these things which I am telling you, right, it is a correlation. There's a lot of difference between correlation and causation. If you ask me, okay, then if somebody gives me an injection of dopamine, will I be in the same state? I cannot say that. It's not possible. That's why words are very clearly mentioned. It should be endogenous. So you can see here, endogenous means it has to be secreted within the brain. It is not exogenous. It is not what you inject. Even though chemically it could be the same, but the property of these chemicals which are inherently secreted in the brain is entirely different from what is generally it is given. So rest of the other thing is, right, it was F.R. Carrick who gave this particular thing. We know that okay, all our stress, psychological stress, will play a lot of havoc by bringing some changes in the genetic structure. It means that when my mind is stressed, when my mind is agitated, when my mind doesn't have a capacity to focus, when my mind doesn't have a capacity to regulate my emotions, When my mind doesn't have a capacity to be in that calm, cool and high state after meditation, or when it is very agitated, it will influence the genes. Then he says that if the stress can influence around 2200 genes, okay, that is present in our body, suppose the reverse also should be true. Means what? If I can take care of my agitated mind, if I can take care of my wandering mind, if I can take care of my, say, emotional inequilibrium, that should also affect my genes. So will that happen? Definitely it is going to happen. So this is what, see, this is just a picture of our genes, that is DNA. You can see these dots at the end of these things, right? These are called as telomere. The length of these is what determines the age of the cell, efficiency of the cell. Say, if somebody develops, say, cancer of any particular cell, there will be a defect in this tip. This is called as length of a telomere. Now, studies have shown very clearly. Please look at this particular slide. It's not only meditation, your purpose in life. This is where the philosophy comes into picture. If you have a positive cognitions and you have emotional negativity, right? What is influence on? So it will influence the telomerase activity. That is the activity of the tip of the DNA. If you are always, as yesterday I told you about all our Harishad Vargas, emotional negativity, me, mine, selfishness, all those things, right? It has a negative influence on telomerase activity. If I have a holistic thought, positive thoughts, right? Always holistic thought, enhance attention, and I can control, right, my emotions. It has a positive influence on the activity of a DNA, that is on telomerase. This has a tremendous effect on every cell of the body, including the neurons. Any alterations in this, as I told you, right, it brings about faster aging, less capacity of the cell, right? And the cell cycle means cell has its own life cycle. New cell is born and old cell dies away. This is also regulated. So if the tip of the DNA is deranged, the cell cycle is also lost. That's how you have a unprecedented multiplication of one particular cell is what it can bring about, say, cancerous conditions. So looking at this is the principle in which now all this yoga and meditation practice has got a lot of clinical importance in the clinical practice for the patients, not only for them, even for the healthy individuals, for our cell to be active, for aging of the cell to be reduced, to increase the efficiency of the cell, right? So this plays an important role. But again, I want to reiterate important things, not only just a mechanical of doing the practice of meditation, but the intention of doing the practice is very, very important. This is what the whole thing about, we call it as the purpose of life, which I gave you in my first slide about 4 circles. We have a purpose of life, and this purpose of life is what the unique contribution, from our philosophical angle, where they have given the highest goal for you, right? Okay, that you have to experience the supreme, the consciousness. So in that process, where you have to develop all this, this positivity. So this is just a statement. So this is a statement again which I have taken from Rajoga lectures of Swami Vivekananda. So he tells that when the thought is joined to a will, we call it bhavan. that which strikes the sick person whom you are trying to help is not the thought but the power. See, this is a next state, okay, of any a serious practitioner, right? So we have a will, we have a thought, right, of doing japa or a meditation. It's just a thought. Everybody will get. I also think, okay, today I have to do a meditation, but that has to be joined by the will. When the thought is joined by the will, okay, we'll get a power. So with that, that psyche, with that mentality, you go and meet, say, Vivekananda says, you go and you console a person, okay, console a sick person, console a person who is feeling very low. It is not your thought that is working, but it is the power that it is working. Probably it is also our experience. If I want to go and meet somebody in the hospital and say, hello, how are you? Okay, get well soon. It is just a thought. But when my intention is very clear, that thought and the words that comes out of that will gain the power. And that power is what, that will really impact the other person. So this is what actually, we experience whenever we are in a satsanga or whenever we are in the presence of a holy person. And in Raj Yoga, Swamiji also tells this. So he gives this idea. He says, imagine that imagination must hold to the thought of the health and the strength in order, that in case of illness, memory of the ideal health may be roused and the particles are rearranged into the position, right, like that of a healthy person. Means I'll just give you a summary. If a person is not feeling good or he is feeling very sick, right, the particles in his body is being rearranged, right, rearranged in a unhealthy fashion. When that is the case, he tells that your imagination, you should hold to the very intense thought, and with the will of that I'm going to become very healthy, and this particular thought, it can rearrange your particles in the body in a healthy fashion. And he tells, if this happens, he tells next, if this happens, then the tendency of the body is then to follow the brain. It is not the brain that can follow the body. So he tells, so that's what he tells, my thought that we consciously arose, a positive thought, that will have an influence on all the particles with the rest of the body, right? And it will have a rearrangement of themselves. And we have seen that is happening, including to the genetic level, which I told you about the telomerase. So that's why he says the best form of prana, right, however, is in brain and manifests itself as light, and this light is under the guidance of thought. So again, then subsequently, in Raj Yoga, he continues about the prana, and he gives how this prana are expressed in different biological systems. But then he says the best form of prana is what is expressed in the brain. So that's why brain is a medium for us to understand the consciousness and to raise for the different level of consciousness. And also from the neuroscience point of view, we have 3 types of motivation system. Probably this will be very helpful for our our day-to-day life also. And this is what I was telling about the purpose of life. We may do a lot of meditation practice, that's a different issue. But what is the purpose of life? And because the purpose of the life is what that determines how do we communicate, or how do we develop our relationship with other people. Now we have three different systems in the brain. So suppose, say, if my purpose is always pursuing that I want to pursue something, I want to achieve something, I want to consume something, a typical today any professional person, he works. So this is an incentive focused. Always an incentive focus. Okay, I'll do this, I'll get my perks. I do this, my salary is enhanced, I'll get a promotion. So always there is an incentive behind whatever I work. This has a different system in the brain, and it releases a different chemicals. And then we have below this we can have very primitive, that is threat focused, right? Why do I act the way? Because he feels a threat. It can be a physical threat or psychological threat, or it can be a threat to my own perception or ego, whatever it is. We have a threat focused. The most important thing, right? We have something called as a non-wanting or affiliation focused. Means I'm working for this just because I love to do this. I'm taking care of this person because I love to do this. I'm doing this work just because I have to do this. See, this is how all the guru works. A real guru works because he intensely loves his disciples, and he works for that. And he doesn't have any expectation like that of an incentive focused. All these three different intention behind our work has its own effect on the brain, and this we call it as motivation systems of the human brain, and where we can really very correctly correlate, right, our philosophical ideas and our lifestyle with all these things, and we can fit these things into any of this arena. It can be from profession to business to individual behavior to the family, or so many things it can fit in Hingori. Why this is very important? It's very important because if we go to this particular mode of non-wanting, affiliation focused, because I really love, and because you have to do the work because you really like it. So if we do this with this intention of any work, right, there is a different chemical that is released in the brain. We call it as oxytocin, along with dopamine, DHA, all those things. All these chemicals will increase the efficiency of my neurons. My attention span is increased, right? And my gamma is also naturally increased. These two, threat focused and this yellow, the incentive focused, our stress hormone is increased. Initially, we will have a very good performance. Initially, 2 projects, the best performance. His boss is threatening to him, or he has his own insecurities, or he's more focused on incentives, and he's working and working and working. Stress is building up. His cortisol increased, epinephrine is increased, norepinephrine increased, right? No doubt this will increase efficiency of your brain as far as the attention is concerned to a certain period of time, but after a threshold, the same gradually it comes down. So this is what just I wanted to tell you, the correlate of the having a holistic philosophy for life and the philosophical principles for the life. Having a purpose in life is very important first, then subsequently, whichever the meditation or the practices, okay, that all those things that we can see. So this is what I briefly explained, right, how this yoga, meditation practice or japa can really influence us at all the levels, from the physical to intellectual to emotional to moral, and also to that of the spiritual. But I know that it will not answer all the the spiritual questions of the spiritual aspirants. I'm very well aware of that. But it's not that neuroscience is not also very well developed that, okay, it can assess everything. I know there will be a lot of questions with chakras, there will be a lot of questions on prana and all those things. But if you ask me, can I answer all those things in terms of neuroscience framework? No, it's not possible. But does it exist? It is existing. It is not imagination at all, as yesterday I told you. Because ages and ages and ages, right? These have been practiced and people have realized it. Then it has to be true. But only thing is, probably our technology is not very sensitive enough to pick up these things, or maybe the way we understand, right, may not be very suitable things for this. But people are there who have experienced, and we have to take even that as a proof, because it has reproduced from ages. Okay, thank you very much.